And welcome to another edition of the Tom Green Podcast, a little pregame show like we've done over the past month and a half or so. We've done a couple of pregame shows now, a couple of Wings previews, and now we step into the international scene once again as both the NHL and NBA are on all-star breaks. The NBA coming back from all-star break, but the NHL has got one very important game coming up tomorrow night, Thursday night, between the USA and Canada, second time in the Four Nations face-off. With us, we have a freelance reporter, Marissa Voss, here from Minnesota.
Mhm.
Marissa, glad to connect with you and glad to have you on the show. And I'm looking forward to a nice chat about the second USA Canada matchup.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited. I've been very, very vocal about the Four Nations tournament. A lot of my content has been centered around that, has been doing really well, which means that everybody is excited about this tournament as well. So really excited to just talk about Canada versus USA in the championship game because it's gonna be insane.
Oh, absolutely. And last week on the show, I did a solo show talking about the both All-Star breaks, and my initial thoughts, and this was before the first USA Canada face-off, was, well, this tournament's kind of there. I'd like to see an all-star skills competition at the very least, but it's nice to have. And then USA Canada happens, and then, oh, this is getting spicy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly though, like I think we have different ways of viewing about it because I did not want comps at all. I didn't want skills comps. I hated it. I've always hated it. I thought it was cringe in my opinion because I just wanted more. I wanted it to mean more to the guys. It felt like a lot of the guys were just like going through the motions when they were doing it, especially when we had Kirill Kaprizov in it. Like he didn't want to go, but he did, and those types of things. But then we had the first game, USA versus Finland, and then Canada versus Sweden, which was insane. And right from the bat, I was like, this is awesome because it means something. It means something to the guys. You have the name on the back doesn't mean anything. Compared to the name on the front, right? They're playing for USA, Canada, Finland. They're playing for Sweden. So I'm obsessed with the tournament. I will say I do agree with you though on the part like I was very excited for USA hockey. I didn't think there was going to be three fights in the first 9 seconds of the game with Matthew Tkachuk, Brady Tkachuk, and then JT Miller. And then also them having a group chat about it, which was crazy to hear. So that was really that was insane. The entire game though was crazy.
Absolutely. As an aside, I have two Goldens in my house. I heard the bark. Hi, doggy.
Yes, yes. She is the only dog I've ever had where she doesn't like content creation or podcasts or videos. Like she like barks or like freaks out or anything. So if you hear her like whining in the background, it's just because she doesn't like me to do my job.
Well, the good news is I've got two at home, so you're in good company there. So before we get towards, we'll get back to the USA Canada thing here,
Mhm.
but tell me a little bit about yourself for those that don't know about the story of Marissa Voss.
Yeah, so I'm 27 years old and I am again right now I'm a freelance contractor, which means companies come to me because they want certain things that they can do. So basically I do a lot of like video content, I do a lot of reporting, I do podcasting. Those are the types of things, a lot of social media managing. But what started this out for me was I went to Bethany Lutheran College in Mankato, Minnesota, and I was Minnesota State University Mankato's men's college hockey team. I was their reporter for years and years and years while I was in college. I also hosted their podcast, and that was really fun. Went to back in the day it was WCHA for them like Alabama Huntsville, Northern Michigan, Alaska Fairbanks, Alaska Seawolves, that kind of vibe. And then graduated. I went to KUIC News Now, which is a local news station, and I was a multimedia journalist. Did a little bit of sports here and there because for a lot of people, you know that you have to pay your dues, which means you have to do a lot of news, and then you could break into sports. For a lot of people, if you're not blessed with just the sports reporter or anchor role, and then I took on the digital content manager and team interviewer back at Minnesota State for the men's hockey team. I did their socials for a year. I did all the interviews. It was super fun. I was also doing that and then reporting as well, both of them, which was very busy, very busy. I didn't get much sleep ever. Did Hockey Day Minnesota, which is a Minnesota holiday. We celebrate hockey wherever it is. It kind of bounces from town to town, and it's a big celebration. So that year was in Mankato. Got to do that and cover that. I also went to the Frozen Four and the national championship Minnesota State was in with Denver. I think it was in 2022 which is
Okay.
crazy to think about. They unfortunately did lose to Denver, so that was hard to watch at TD
Oh, I
Garden. It was
imagine.
it was actually at TD Garden where the Four Nations Championship game is going to be at
Right.
tomorrow or Thursday, I should say. And then from there, I just went to Nebraska, worked at Hurrdat Sports. They cover Creighton, they cover UNO, Omaha, they cover obviously the Cornhuskers, football, basketball, baseball, volleyball. I was on a volleyball beat for a long time, so got to learn a lot about that sport, which it is the epicenter of volleyball. And then I decided, you know what, I miss home too much. It's not cold enough in Nebraska. I have it be negative 30 degrees when I step outside. Like that's home. So now back in Minnesota and I'm covering Minnesota sports and professional sports and everything the best I can. So hopefully, like you said, and like we said, I think the goal is always to work in professional sports. So that's kind of what you do and bide your time with a lot of other things. Hopefully that'll work out. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do.
Absolutely, and we all have different stories, and that's part of why I've kept the name of the show as my own, the Tom Green Podcast, is because I like to venture out into variety sometimes and do international stuff. Along with, I've actually done a sort of a virtual resume type of show with Sam Ollie a few months ago when
Mm-hmm.
he stepped down from WEYI here in the state of Michigan. So for those that don't know me, a little bit about me, I currently work at the Huron Daily Tribune in Bad Axe, Michigan as a sports writer, covering 10 high school teams, 8 in Huron County, which in size is bigger than the state of Rhode Island, our county, which is crazy to think about. Plus, so two little towns called Cass City and Deckerville. We cover those, and I've dubiously called it the day job on the show because, there's things at the day job I can't talk about, things in the regular show I can't talk about, etc. But before then, I did some freelance public address announcing for my alma mater high school, Essexville Garber. John Paul Morosi graduated from that same school many years ago. Meant
Nice.
from him, went to a little radio station called WLEW for a year and a half to do news, and now I've been in sports. So I've done some freelancer stuff along the same lines. So, like you say, we got to pay our dues to get here, and we're both definitely doing that.
Absolutely. 110%. Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. So back to USA Canada. John Cooper had said about the first matchup. This is 10 years of international hockey. The layoff of international hockey decked out in 2 minutes, and I think we saw that with the three fights to start.
Yeah, it's always, I mean, USA hockey, when you think about hockey, you think about USA versus Canada, right? And it is a rivalry because, Canada, they like say, that's our sport. That's our sport, hockey. When you think, like, when Canada's say, when you think of hockey, you think of Canada. United States, though, have a lot of hockey going on, right? Like it's growing, it's huge, it's new. It's not new, but it's huge. Like so, that's always been a thing, right? And I think that's just what it is when you have two hockey teams going head to head. It's just what it is. It's always been that way. And one of the things I love about Matthew and Brady Tkachuk throwing down the mitts in the first couple seconds of the USA versus Canada game is that they're following in their father's footsteps because Keith Tkachuk fought Claude Lemieux in 1996 in the World Cup of Hockey as well. So those are the things where it's like that's what I love so much, right? Like the history of it, and you're seeing those things play out, and it doesn't matter how old it is or new it is or whatever. Like it and like how what the players maybe haven't played for USA. That's always going to be a thing where it doesn't matter. Time will not pass. USA and Canada hockey will always be rivals, and it'll always be a fierce battle. And I think you just saw that, right? And even against like a stacked Canada team. I mean, think about it. You've Sidney Crosby, you've got Connor McDavid, you've got Nate McKinnon, you've got Cale Makar when he's healthy. He hasn't been healthy this tournament, so we haven't seen a lot of Cale Makar. You've got Cale Makar, you've got Brad Marchand, you've got all of these and Mitch Marner, right? Like I forget about all of these talented people on Team Canada. It's kind of crazy to think about. And then you also again have United States where you have Austin Matthews, captain, who hasn't contributed much in like the aspect of assists or goals. You have got Matt Boldy stepping up, Brock Faber. You have Jack Hughes. You've got Brady and Matthew Tkachuk. We've said a lot during this show, but like it's still. I mean, Jake Gensel is having an absolutely crazy tournament. He's had 3 goals. Like it's both teams are incredibly stacked. And I just don't think on Thursday, like the 3-1, it was kind of crazy. I thought there would be more fight in it for Canada, but we kind of a little bit silenced that. And that was cool to see.
Absolutely, and of course, as an aside, it's kind of crazy to see Brad Marchand being cheered at the Bell Center and
I
Austin
know.
Matthews being cheered at TD Garden.
It's one of those things where I made a video on my TikTok and like on Twitter and everything, and I said, I my worst reality is coming to like I think I'm a Brady and Matthew Kachuk fan, right? Like I'm turning into a Brady, and like I never thought that was happening. Or like Brad Marchand, like for people again at Bell Center who are cheering for them, that's like such a like all weird experience to have. Like you're like I don't like the Kachucks, but I'm cheering for them because they're on Team USA. That's wild. And then the same thing with Canada, they're like I don't like Brad Marchand, but now I'm cheering for him. So that's kind of what this tournament has done, where it really does bring you know people and players who usually don't gel together or you haven't seen together or anything. Again, that's what happens when you have a best on best tournament. I'm happy this is the first one since 2016, but I'm still pissed. This is the first one since 2016. What have we been doing? What have we been doing? Why has this been a thing? Like this should have always been a thing because it's patriotic, and especially when you don't have NHL players who have been able to play in the Olympics because of injuries. I hope they keep this though, because we have seen a lot of injuries, unfortunately, with this best on best tournament. So I'm hoping, especially with Charlie McAvoy.
Wait.
Yeah, so he's I'm like trying to pronounce his name, McAvoy. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm like, whenever you ever get a word and you're like, am I
Right.
pronouncing that right? I think I am. Like I know this name, and for some
Mhm.
reason I'm on this podcast and I can't remember it. But you have Charlie who's down, and then Quinn Hughes hope like coming in allegedly. I don't know.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of things, but this tournament's just been fantastic.
Right. And another one is I would go with your pronunciation of Marchand over Marchand. So you know what I mean? It's like on this show, it's like we let it fly here. It's fine. I'm fine. We're fine. It's good because I went to school with a guy with the last name of McAvoy spelled exactly or actually with an EVOY instead of
hmm
AVOY. So it's all different, of course. But one
hmm
guy that I gotta mention on the show because we've talked about Team Canada and I kind of see him as either you love him or you hate him is Paul Bissonnette. I love seeing his loyalty towards Team Canada. And, he's one of those I don't give a damn type of guy about his opinions, too, because he talked about last week how Connor Bedard was playing pond hockey and the Blackhawks just made fun of him like crazy. And he's like, you know what? Bring it. Bring it. I don't care. That's my opinion.
I love Paul Biznasty so bad. He is probably one of my favorite analysts. You're one of my favorite creators. I love Spit and Chicklets. I actually I got to witness. I didn't introduce myself because I couldn't find it, but Mike Grinelli, who is the producer, obviously, he was at Minnesota at the Gopher versus Wisconsin game because he does this thing called Chicklets University where he goes to different college hockey places. And he, does the atmosphere thing and everything for Spin Chicklets and Barstool Sports. But I love Spin Chicklets and I love Paul because I think he's like you said, something I love. He's so authentically himself. It doesn't like things do not phase Paul. Things do not like with the way that like the Chicago Blackhawks thing would probably hurt my feelings. It doesn't hurt him. He brings it on. He brings that, yeah, what else do you have for me? And he's just such an electric human being. Like I would love to grab a beer with Paul Bissonnette. Like it's one of my things, or a Pink Whitney shot. I don't know, or whatever. But I seriously,
Right.
I think that he him with Canada and the way that he's like obviously that is his home, that's his home country, that's what Paul Bissonnette grew up with. Obviously you got to back your own country when it comes to these things. And
Sure.
like again he and with Wayne Gretzky and on TNT, and I just love it. I love it so much. I don't know if I'm paused. It looks like I paused. Sorry if I was
You're
paused there
good.
for a little bit. I was on my rant about Paul, and my computer was like,
Right.
"Listen, we need to take a little bit of a heater, a little bit of a break." But no, I think Paul, and like one of the things I just want to talk about a little bit more is he grows the game. He's growing the game one step at a time because he's making it fun for these younger kids. He's making it, funny. He's making it in a way that's enjoyable. It's not just, oh, I'm just going to talk about hockey and do statistics and do this. Like, yeah, he gets really professional at a lot of times. He does, but he also gives it back to Wayne Gretzky. He gives it to the buoy thing. He gives it, he makes a bit out of it. And that's what people love and these young kids love and really resonate with. And he's growing the game without even really knowing it. So Paul is one of my favorite internet personalities. I love him. I'm a huge stan. I respect him backing his own country, even though if it is Canada, I get it. I understand. But he's done really great, especially if you talk about how he was in Montreal for Spit and Chicklets, and he was there for that game, and he was there, in Montreal, and then literally 9 hours later, like he had to go on a 9 hour road trip to Boston, and then he was on NHL and TNT. Like they drove that. It's like the Chiclet Boys did. So shout out to Paul Bissonnette, but like you love him.
Absolutely. And as you know, as people get to know me a little bit, I'm sort of similar where it's like, you know what? And yes, there are things that I have taken personally in the past, and I'm trying to get through that. But still, that's Paul is somebody that has really grown the game, and I'm sure that he would say if he listened to the show, he would say, "No, Marissa, that's McJesus, not McDavid." Because that is who Paul is that he has those quirks and those isms,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes him somebody that even I would like to have a beer around. So Paul, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the show at some point because that would be hopefully 40 minutes of comedy for sure.
Oh God.
Is.
That might be the highest viewed Tom Green podcast in history if you could have Paul Bissonnette on your show. And I'm pretty sure he would say McJesus. And then you know what he would also say? Nate Dogg. He would say Nate Dogg instead of
Yep.
Nate McKinnon. Like that would be the best show ever.
And the thing is, you could, if you watch the Canada and Finland game on Monday, and you saw some of the intermission report, you could feel the tension in the room
Mm-hmm.
between Biz and Tuukka Rask in between in the intermissions there, as Canada scored three in the first period.
Oh God, yeah. Tuca was like, I don't know why I'm here. Oh my God. And it was so funny. One of the funniest things, because obviously they have that ongoing bit with Brad, and it's like, Mr. TNT and everything. And like they usually don't like each other, and they did because obviously Canada versus like they came together for their country.
Right.
But one of my favorite things is when Tuca was like, "Hey Brad, like you're one of the oldest guys in the locker room." And Brad's like, "Easy. Easy." Like he's like he didn't mean it in an insult, but that's just how funny the show is. Like usually you wouldn't get that in a regular interview, but he's like, yeah, you're one of the oldest guys in the locker room. What does that mean to have that leadership? And Brad goes, easy there, because he doesn't want to be called old. It's just stuff
Right.
like that too, where it's like the Tuukka Rask was great, and then you also had Henrik on, with USA and Sweden, and he was super happy because obviously Henrik Lundqvist is Swedish,
Oh yeah.
so yeah, it was cool to see him back, and you've had a revolving guys coming in for the NHL TNT. I know no disrespect to ESPN, but I really just want it to be NHL and TNT for the entire tournament. That's my personal opinion. That's what I want the entire tournament because I just think they make it so enjoyable.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, it's all now I'm starting to think about that This Is Sports Center commercial with Henrik Lundqvist and the Swedish chef from
Yeah.
many years ago. Now it's got in your head because I'm saying that, but it's almost like a comparison to the NFL today on CBS versus the
Hmm.
Fox NFL Sunday pregame show, where CBS is just serious business, whereas Fox is that's where you go to watch the funnies and. Typically on Sundays during the fall, I'm watching NFL on Fox for 2 hours before the noon and central 1 p.m. kickoffs is because it has that very similar dynamic where CBS is quite serious versus the NFL where you have all the funny bits. So let's say, yeah, I'll take T. I would like to hear Sean McDonough as my play-by-play guy, but I would like it. I would prefer NHL on TNT as your intermission reports because that's
Hmm.
that's some fun content right there for sure.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
So now let's go to this game preview. I mean, we saw what the first game was, and it
Hmm.
kind of reminds me a little bit of 2010, where
Hmm.
USA won in the pool play, but we all remember what happened in the final in Vancouver, and I don't think we want to
Yes.
mention it too much because ugh, it's still kind of heart-wrenching, but that that thing that that's there, and it's something to be at least mentioned on the show. So I guess what are some of your initial thoughts on this game tomorrow night?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you play a team twice or three times in the regular season, you can't beat them in the playoff, or vice versa. Like it's hard to beat a team once, it's hard to beat a team twice or three times. I think that's obviously going to be in a lot of people's minds, especially with Canada. And it's been mentioned about, on the bench guys mentioned it, and a lot of these Canada, creators and Canadians mentioned it because it's something that should be mentioned, right? Especially with history or hopefully not repeating itself, but that already being a trend in history when we beat them in pool play and they came back and beat us. I will say one thing that they have, and I wanted to wear this sweatshirt because my aunt got it for me because she's from Columbus, Ohio. And after this happened in August, I was devastated. I didn't know the guy, but I was devastated for the family. And it's a Johnny Hockey sweatshirt, right? It's a Johnny Hockey sweatshirt, 13, and then on the back it says, forever Johnny Hockey. And that's something that touches my heart. I think it touches a lot of people. But one story, like literally, right, like right
Yeah.
in the heart. And one of the things that's been so cool though about Team USA is that they have they have a Johnny Hockey USA jersey, and they bring it everywhere. They bring it in the practice center. They bring it to to the Bell Center, to TD Garden, everywhere. They have a Johnny Hockey jersey always hanging out in the locker room. And, again, Charlie said before, we're playing for him. He would have loved to be here. He would have loved this. And all the guys in the locker room know how much, this would have meant to Johnny. And that's who they're playing for. And I think that's what makes it a little more different for them, is that it's when they're singing Dream On, right? It's when Austin Matthews is giving a speech or talking about how good they played. It's in every fiber. Guy Gaudreau was there, and he was practicing with the team, and he was also at dinner with the 1980 medalists, and he was with the entire team before the tournament kicked off. So I think that's also another huge part of it I want to mention, is that they're playing for Johnny, and they're playing for Matthew, and they're playing for the Gaudreau family, and I think that's going to fuel them. I also am, Charlie's out. That sucks. Quinn Hughes, don't know what's happening with him. So it was Mike Sullivan in a presser said, Charlie's out. What's going to happen? Like, what's going on? And then, you have Jake Sanderson stepping in, but they want Quinn. And Mike Sullivan said Quinn is coming. Okay, great. Quinn's coming. Great. Everybody's like, oh, Quinn Hughes, that's awesome. We didn't think he was going to come because he said he wasn't, because he needed that time to rest his body. He didn't want to be in the Four Nations tournament. Well, all of a sudden now we have reports that he is actually skating with Vancouver. He's still at Vancouver. He's still skating. We had that report, like that day that he was at practice. And now today also, he's still in Vancouver. He's still skating. They don't know if Quinn Hughes is coming. I don't know when this is going to come out. We don't know what's going to happen. And I don't know, because Jake Sanderson is the one that's going to be taking the place and not Quinn. And so I don't know if that was premature by Mike. I don't know if he wanted Quinn there. And then Quinn didn't want to be there, and it was kind of like too early, too jumping on the gun. He just assumed that Quinn was going to pack his bags and come, but he's not on the flight yet. He's not in Boston. We still have, obviously, until tomorrow, but I would be shocked if he didn't come for practice. He didn't get a skate in with the boys or anything. So that's kind of another development going on. We don't know if Quinn's going to be there. I think if he is in the lineup, I think that's going to be huge. You have him with Jack. You have the Kachuk brothers, right? I think this is going to be a game. I don't think this is going to be like, we saw 3-1. I don't think this is going to be, I think it's going to be crazy. I think there's probably going to be some fights. I genuinely do think there's going to be some fights throwing down the midst. Now, do I know it's going to be in the first couple seconds? I don't know. You never know with these two teams. You never know with Team Canada. You never know with Team USA. But I think it's going to be down to the wire. I think it's going to be a close game. And I think that, if Cale Makar isn't in it, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff. Like if Cale Makar is still not in and they've got a couple more injuries at Canada, I think that it could sway towards USA's way. But I also think that, again, you have Sidney Crosby, whose passing has been on point. You've got a stacked team, which we've reiterated. I don't think they're going to let that go, and I don't think they're going to go quiet. So I'm expecting a 1-goal game. Now, is it going to be a high-scoring game? I don't know. I don't know if they're I'm assuming Hallebuck's going to be in the net because Ottinger was in the net for Sweden, and we knew how that played out. And then I think Jordan
played
Binnington
very well too.
Oh my God, he's been playing. That's the thing. He's playing insane, and I'm glad that they did Jake Ottinger. I really did. I am, because that's what needed to happen. I'm also very pissed off because we could have had a Jeremy Swayman versus Linus Allmark, and like both of those, and we didn't. because Linus Allmark was sick, and then they didn't go with Swayman, they went with Ottinger. So that also could have happened. I just needed to squeeze that in because I'm still upset about that. But I think it's going to be a 1-goal game. It could be high scoring. I don't think it will be because I think both goaltenders have been really good. So I think this is going to be a very, very close game.
Absolutely. And the thing about the early fights was, I think also John Tortorella may have had something to do with it because we saw it 10 years ago, and maybe you've heard the classic "Don't push me" that
Mm-hmm.
somebody made on the internet, but that was inspired by Calgary starting their fourth line when Torts was coaching Vancouver, and a fight ensued between both lines to start the game. So I think it was also helped orchestrated by him. But still, we've all seen the meme. Absolute cinema. That's what that first game was, and that's what that second game is going to be is absolute cinema, just in another country, the United States, because we know that Canada is going to be pissed off from
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
because they didn't want to lose 3-1. They wanted to win 3-1. And definitely, I will also mention that for the day job, I have written a column months ago, and I'll shoot it at you and at the podcast Twitter feed about Johnny Gaudreau and
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Hockey. I do want to shoot that at you so that you can see it too, because it hit me, it struck me pretty good too when that happened. And prayers up for the Gaudreau family, especially. But how I see it is, well, how our scoring is going to go, we're going to find out in the first 10 minutes. If we see 2 goals early, then it's going to be probably a 10 to 12 goal game, somewhere around 6-4 or 7-5. But if we see no goals in the first period, then it could be something like 1-0 or 2-0 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll kind of go into our prediction section here, and I'm going to say USA 3, Canada 2, overtime. Austin Matthews scores the game winner 2 minutes into overtime.
Finally gets on the board. Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at Austin Matthews, and I think that a lot of people have where he just hasn't. He's been in it, but not really. Like, and the same thing with Jack Hughes. Like, but Jack Hughes has had a really good tournament, and I think that
Yes.
if you're somebody who, not to be rude, but if you're somebody who doesn't know hockey as well, you would just look at you point blank look and be like, well, he doesn't have any goals, doesn't have any assists, like he hasn't had a good tournament, but he's been in every single play and he's been the playmaker to make those things happen, and he's been very instrumental to Team USA's victories when they have happened. So Jack Hughes had a great tournament. I would love to get a Jack Hughes goal. I don't know. I'd love to get an Austin Matthews goal. I would love to make that happen. But I also think that you look at Jake Gensel. I think Jake Gensel is going to get a goal in this game.
Yes.
I think it's going to happen because he's had an absolutely unreal tournament. I think
He's
that's
had
going to keep
two against
going.
Canada.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's also going to be a huge one to get into this. I think it's going to be 4-3 USA. I think that they're going to get in Bennington's head. I think the last game got into it. He's a, I don't want to say he's a good goalie. I don't like Jordan Binnington. So I'm just going to say that they're going to pepper him and he's not going to have a good game because personally, not a fan of Jordan Binnington. Doesn't matter what jersey he's wearing or where he is. He's kind of like an Aaron Rodgers to me. I will not be a fan of that man. So I think that that's going to get in his head. I think they're going to pepper, and I think Jake Gensel is going to get a goal. And I honestly don't know if it's going to be in regulation. I would maybe think overtime. I think I'm going to go to be different than you. I'm going to go regulation. 4-3 regulation. USA wins.
Absolutely. And I would assume you're a Vikings fan. As a Lions
Yes.
fan, we can both definitely agree that Aaron Rodgers is public enemy number one.
Absolutely, dude. All the people that are like looking at me and saying, Aaron Rodgers, Vikings, it's the pipeline because of the Brett Favre. It has to happen. I literally will not become. I will stop becoming a Vikings fan if Aaron Rodgers is our QB, and that is insane because I love the Minnesota Vikings, but I think I hate Aaron Rodgers more. It doesn't make any sense. I hate it. If he comes, do not come to my house. Do not come to my town. Do not come to my state, Aaron Rodgers. For the love of God, just retire.
There we go. So, well, now we'll play a little game called Light the Lamp. If you've listened to the show before, or if you've seen, I'm sure FanDuel Minnesota does this, FanDuel Detroit does.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to score the most points in the game? Since we both picked the U.S., it's kind of a free for all. Who's going to score the most points in this game?
Oh, the most points. Let's see. So Matt Boldy had a really good game where he had like assist and a goal or 2 assists and a goal or something like that. Matt Boldy had a really good game. Um, I'm just gonna go the same thing that I've been going with, and I think Jake Gensel. I'm not gonna say the Kachuk brothers because as much as they are in the game, that's great. They've also been dealing with injuries. Matthew obviously sat out for Sweden versus USA, and then Brady left the game with an injury. They're gonna be back on the championship game, but I don't know how much they're going to be just because of those injuries and if their bodies are really or they're fighting through it for their country or if they're truly better. But I'm just gonna go Jake Enzel. He's red hot right now. That's the Minnesota Nebraska boy. I got to do that. I got to go with him. He's having a great tournament. I think he's gonna get some assists. I think he's gonna get a couple more goals, and I think he's gonna have the most points.
Marissa goes with Jay Gensel. I will go with Larkin. I will go
That's such a good one. That is such a good one.
the Detroit man, the Michigan man. As I think we would still have a contention about who's the real U of M. I say the University of Michigan's the real U of M.
Minnesota, baby.
I
Minnesota.
figured that would be the case for you.
Mm-hmm.
I will go deal with Dylan Larkin. So we're both kind of going with hometown tout, which makes sense to me. Both rooting for Team USA, of course. She picks Gensel. I pick Larkin. In the Tom Green podcast series, I lead 2 games to 0 because
Nice.
Jess had 0 points. Brendan Scott had 1 point in the Edmonton game. I had the hammer because Lucas Raymond had the shootout winning goal in that game against Edmonton. So perhaps you could be the first one to beat me in my own light the game. We shall see. So the other thing I had was how fitting. Detroit and Minnesota play each other on Saturday to open up second half of play. So a quick hitter on that if you can.
Yeah, that's at US? That's at the
It's
X,
in
right?
Detroit.
Yeah. Oh, it's in Detroit. God,
Yep.
it's so hard for me. 'Cause I've been so locked in on USA hockey. I just forgot that there's actually like regular season coming up, and we're getting back to regular hockey. I'm like, so yeah, the Wild have been practicing, which is crazy because obviously Matt Boldy and Brock Faber are with USA, so they've been practicing without him. Yeah, I mean, before we went to Four Nations, right? I think we really needed that break. Kirill Kaprizov had a surgery, still not practicing, still not skating, still not doing anything, unfortunately. So that's a rough one. I think this team started off red hot. I think they have the potential to be really, really good. It's just like the injury bug and everything else. But I don't know. I mean, also Detroit. I guess I haven't really paid much attention to Detroit, but I got to go with Minnesota. They're great on the road. They're absolutely fantastic. They're better on the road than at home, which is very unusual for a team. But they've been doing it. I mean, they beat Dallas in Dallas, and they've had a lot of great. I mean, they beat Maple Leafs at their home, and when they went on their recent road trip, they've been really, really, really solid. I think they got 3 out of 4 wins. They lost to Ottawa, but then I think they beat the Canadians too. So I think you guys are next. I think you guys are on that road trip where it's going to click, especially with Brock Faber and Matt Boldy. I think a lot of people might think they'd get tired from playing with USA, but I think it's almost helps them to keep playing hockey, and I think they're going to be tuned up for it as well. So I'm excited. I can't wait for that to happen, but I do think that we're going to best you in your own barn.
That is very possible. And as for Detroit, Tom McClellan took over on December 26th. He said, we need to play effing hockey. And that's exactly what they've done, winning
Yeah.
14 of the last 16 games 17 before the All-Star break, losing to Tampa right before the break. But it has kind of become that time where they needed a break, and hopefully they'll get right back to the schneid. So I will take Detroit in overtime, but
Mm.
nonetheless, the big game is Thursday, and that's the one we're really looking forward to. So at this point, anything else that you may have to add to this episode?
No, I mean, just the Minnesota Wild had a great tournament. As a whole, I think that maybe you should just go like Four Nations plus the Minnesota Wild because like you had Joel Eriksson Ek, you had Philip Gustafson, you had Jonas Brodin, you got Matt Boldy, and then you had Brock Faber. And there could have been more. To be honest, you had Marcus Johansson. You've got like a lot of other people that could have been into it. It's because we have an ongoing bit where it's like like Minnesota Wild is basically just Swedish. Like we're the Sweden national team because there's like 5 Sweden players. But they've had a great tournament overall. Minnesota Wild has been absolutely fantastic. You've had a lot of points, you've had a lot of goals. Like it's been great. So I think also that will transition to the Detroit game because like the Minnesota Wild have a great tournament. Now they're just gonna transition to Detroit, and the fun's gonna keep continuing. So that's all I gotta say.
There we go. Good deal. Looking forward to Thursday, and great thanks for coming on the show. I mean, it's good to talk with people throughout the internet, throughout the nation, throughout the world, etc. It's entirely. She is Marissa Voss, and this has been the Tom Green Podcast.